Hi, this is the lesson preparation for April the 1st, Easter Sunday. We'll be looking at John 11, where Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Before we look at some of the notes specifically, and I share some things with you, I want to give a breakdown of the group time frame during the small group. 9 o'clock every Sunday morning, we meet as leaders in the sanctuary just to pray for a minute or two to get things started on the right track and just to be bonded together as leaders. 9:15 in your classrooms, meeting people as they come in. Share prayer requests at the beginning, which there's also a sheet in the notebook to be able to share people that have filled out connect cards and shared prayer requests. But then also go straight into the icebreakers. The icebreakers set the tone, open people up, help them to share some things and really to learn some things without even really knowing that it's happening, because then you're going to tie those icebreaker questions into the main point. So share the main point of what we're going to be getting out of the passage today, and then go right into the discussion questions. So by 9:30, you should be in the discussion questions already. So you've got a good 35 minutes to be able to discuss as a group these questions. And you can walk right down the questions. Look ahead of time. You may not ask all the questions, but do most of them if you can, but just follow through that progression as you discuss. 10:05, get to the action points. Those kind of summarize everything that we talked about. But make sure also you're asking, well, what did God teach you today? What did you see in the scripture you hadn't seen before? What did God reveal to you? And let them bring some things up. You might be surprised. You'll find some things that I didn't think of, you didn't think of, the group didn't think of. Finish it out with prayer and then move on. There's always questions, if time permits, to be able to go a little deeper in some areas or go a different direction in the same kind of topic. So feel free to do that. So I am the resurrection and the life. The introduction talks about butterflies. Classic example of how we're supposed to be changed because Jesus is the resurrection and the life. These icebreaker questions, though, the first one is, have you ever seen that process take place? Well, that's kind of cool if somebody did. I know I did as a kid, had one and watched that whole thing take place. That's kind of cool to be able to see that. Setting you up again for the Lazarus story and how there's a change that takes place there. Second one is kind of fun. If you could raise somebody from the dead, who would it be? Lazarus was raised from the dead. Who would you pick? And why would you do that? That can reveal some things about individuals. And then the third one, have you ever felt like God wasn't there or he wasn't listening whenever you prayed? Now this ties right into Mary and Martha, because they contacted Jesus and said, hey, Lazarus is sick. Jesus knew that. He waited a couple of days. What do you think Mary and Martha felt like? And everybody that was there saying, hey, they contacted Jesus, but he didn't come till 4 days. He's already been dead 4 days. So that can have some real implications and applications to our prayer life. So that's a good question to ask. If you could do that one, that'd probably be a good deal. Then the last one that kind of tied up, what funeral have you been to that was really hard to go to? Lazarus was probably one of those. But what funeral have you gone to that was really a glorious celebration? That's what Lazarus's turned out to be. So you can ask those discussion questions, those icebreaker questions, and then tie that into the main point that if we would trust Jesus, we would experience him as the resurrection and the life. Just highlighting some questions. There's going to be a bunch of questions about why do you think Jesus waited 2 days after he got the message and then traveled and 4 days? Why do you think that is the case? Does that sound hard-hearted or cold? Well, it turned out, Jesus had his reasons, and he, of course, knew what was going to be taking place. But why did he wait? And then one good question that I think would be good to ask is, how do you think Jesus' waiting displays his love for Mary and Martha and for Lazarus himself? That could get some really good answers because we don't usually think of him waiting as showing his love. But it really did, because he was ready to reveal to them something they did not know and would not have known had they not walked through the grief process, seen Jesus as the resurrection and the life, and seen Lazarus be raised. So Jesus always has a bigger end game in mind. He's got more in mind than what we can know or ask. Then, of course, this is the passage, has the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. And the question is, well, why did he cry? Get some ideas from the people, from the group members. and move on. I think there are some really good reasons. It wasn't just emotional, because he should have done that whenever he knew Lazarus was dead. I think when you look at the context of that, you're going to see he was troubled in his spirit and disturbed because nobody was getting it. Yeah, he may have felt grief, and that could be a real part of it, but I think there's another part of that that says he wept because folks weren't getting it. They weren't realizing he was the resurrection and the life. And maybe he wept for joy that they were getting ready to experience that. I don't know. Scripture doesn't say, but it could be a good discussion to be able to have with the group. Finally, there's a couple of questions at the end that they're not biblical. We don't have any kind of tradition about it. But how would you explain this abrupt ending to the story and the fact there's nothing else written about this? This is pretty big, but nothing else is written, and the Bible is silent after this about this incident. Could be interesting to think about. And then, how would you feel if you were Lazarus? Put yourself in Lazarus's position. There's a lot of questions that we will never know the answer to about that, but it could raise some good discussion. And then the question about if time permits, what would you consider old grave clothes that keep you bound to where you don't experience Jesus as the resurrection and the life? This is probably going to be a deep one, and you decide whether you're going to go there or not. I'll just share personally for me, the old grave clothes are some of the old patterns of life that I have that keep me bound. One of the big ones for me is pleasing people. I want to do what people want me to do. Well, that keeps me from experiencing Jesus as the resurrection and the life. That really keeps me bound. It doesn't free me. So that's the intent of that particular question. And then, of course, the action points are taken straight from John 11. And they emphasize, trusting God and his purposes, trust in Jesus. And then I really do believe Jesus was joining in with the mourners and the grief. And we need to join in with folks, too, in their grieving process and in their mourning process. So I hope this video has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. And in a couple of weeks, April the 8th, we'll have our MVP meeting, Mission, Vision, and Preparation. And it's going to be a real exciting one, I guarantee you. All right. See you soon.